How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Garage Build Baits. I'm your host, Wyatt Byer of Byer Lure Co. And let's just get the plugs out of the way right away. So, if you want to support the YouTube channel, Byer Lure Co., if you want to support the podcast, you can always do that by donating to the Buy Me Coffee link down below. And then you can also just reach out directly. I got some other I got some baits that I painted up. If you want to buy one of those, that'd be really cool. If not, eventually I'll get a website up and get those out on there. But anyway, we're going to be talking about BFS fishing. Oh, also, if you want to support me, you can also do that by going on to all the links that I have. An excuse me, sorry. I have an Airbnb link where I go out and I take people fishing. A lot of people just want to, go trout fishing and things like that. But we can do some other things. We can go bass fishing, go try to catch some perch, some crappie, do some pan fishing. But the trout fishing is heating up right now with some cooler temperatures rolling in. So if you want to come out to the Black Hills of South Dakota and go trout fishing, I'll be your huckleberry. But anyway, we're going to be talking about BFS fishing today. So this is going to be a similar episode to my swim bait fishing episode. This is the first year that I've really been throwing swim baits, or back that up. This is the first year that I've really been throwing BFS baits. So let's get into that BFS. I went to one of the local bait shops here, and the old guy that owns the shop, I was like, oh yeah, I like BFS. And I was like, do you know what that is? And he had no idea. So it's getting more and more popular, but it's not super popular out here yet. Same with swim bait fishing. It's not super popular out here yet. But so BFS, that stands for Bait Finesse System. That is going to be your ultralight bait casting fishing. So what I mean by that is, with these BFS setups, there is this casting rod and reel, but they are designed to throw lures, like in some instances, down to 1 gram. And when you start getting into BFS, since it's a technique that originated overseas in Japan, got really popular in Europe, is getting really popular here in the States, start dealing with grams. So I don't even know what, like 1/64th, I don't know how many grams that is. It's not much, but like your little trout magnet, your standard little trout magnet, that's about 1 gram. And so people put the standard on BFS reels is if you can throw a 1 gram lure on it. And my setup right now, with the reel, I probably could throw 1 gram, but with the rod, it's not really set up to throw just a 1 gram lure. So we'll go over my setup here real quick. I have a Tersoya Noya Genius. If you're watching the video version of the podcast, I gotta watch out for the ceiling fan above me, or else this rod is gonna get kachowed. But this is a rod that I made as well. We'll go over it. But for the reel, I have a Tersoya Noya Genius. This is an AliExpress reel. I got it for about $64. Apparently, like, these Dark Wolf Ultra, like Tersoya Noya reels are pretty good. This comes in 8:1 gear ratio, so it's pretty fast. I selected this because I do some stream fishing with this, and felt that it would be an appropriate gear ratio for fishing on streams. Then I have that on a 6-foot ultralight MHX, blank MHX. That is the mud hole tackle name brand, I guess, if you will. So I got that set up on the split grips. Not a super. I could have gone even shorter with these split grips. So right now, we're probably looking at, I don't know, maybe about 7 to 8 inch handle on it, like for the grips. I did put wind grips on here. I just really like how they feel. I know a lot of people aren't really into, it's kind of it's a personal preference. I know some people aren't really into the whole wind grip thing, but because of this blank being as thin as it is on mud hole, I wasn't really able to find a reel seat with an exposed an exposed reel seat so I can get contact with the blank. I thought that would be pretty unique and cool to BFS, but we were not able, working with some of the associates there, they were not able to find one that would fit. If I was to, so that blank, 6 foot ultralight, I think it's 1/32 to 1/4 ounce. It might be 1/64. But I think it's 1/32, throws 1/32 to 1/4 ounce baits, which I think is like the sweet spot for a lot of BFS applications. It's mod fast, so I think it does a lot of things well, but there's definitely room for improvement. So like with that BFS setup, if I was to make a different one, I would probably go shorter, and I would probably overall just go shorter handle, shorter rod. I would go with a fiberglass rod, so I have more of a, still ultralight, but a moderate action. So just really parabolic, just really good for just whipping baits, just having that rod assist with loading up and really flicking those baits out there. I think for small stream applications that would be even better. But as far as the first season, still got a good bit of season to go before we have ice in, but I just want to sit down and talk about this right now. But with everything, this setup has been great. For as far as my line goes, so for a lot of it, I was putting on 6-pound fluorocarbon, just straight 6-pound fluorocarbon, and spooling that up, and that has worked really great. That's what I had a lot of confidence in with my ultralight setup. As far as the line goes, I've been using 6-pound fluorocarbon. I've used 6-pound P line a lot. That copolymer, that worked really well. That was super strong. But I've been using lately the P line, their trout fluorocarbon, and so I have the 4-pound P line trout fluoro on it, and then I have that connected via uni knot with some Bass Pro Shop XPS braid. So it's 10-pound braid, and it's high vis yellow braid to a 4-pound fluorocarbon leader. Pretty long leader, just because I do have my buddy Spices. We're sending each other's reels back and forth. So just with that, the diameter of the lines are pretty similar. So I tried tying an FG knot because I do have micro guides on this BFS setup. If I was to build another one, I'd probably put micro guides on again. I don't know, I like them on that setup. They seem to work really well. But was not able to tie an FG knot just with such a little diameter. It was super hard to tie. I spent like an hour going at it, and then I was like, I'll just do my old standard braid deleter, did a double uni. That leader came through those guides fine and have not had an issue with it. And it stood up to catching, I don't know, an 18-inch rainbow trout on a lake using a megabass. I think it's the X70. I got that bait as a gift for one of my Airbnb trips. This guy had a ton of them, and he was like, "This will be one of your tips. You can have one of these. You pick out the color," and that was really awesome. So I've been throwing a lot of different baits though on this setup, and I've been throwing some really cool baits. So if you listened and watched that episode with Aaron from Era Baits, we have the Era Baits Tiny Glide, and he's just coming out with the Tiny Swimmer as well. This is a super cool BFS bait. It's a tiny resin glide bait, and you can do a lot of things with this bait. One of the things that worked really well for me is giving it some rod input, so it darts back and forth. It glides back and forth. You can dead walk this bait really good. You can burn it in. You can straight retrieve. You can do a lot of things with that little bait. It's super stable. Has a slower sink to it. With colder water, it will sink a lot faster. So a lot of the water I have around here is cold, so it does sink fairly quickly, which is not a bad thing at all. And then talking with Aaron, he has some cool things coming down the pipeline for that bait and his other designs and everything. Super cool dude to talk to. With that bait though, I like walking it and I like gliding it. When I glide it, I do a couple glides and then I kill it and I let it sit there and it'll slowly sink. And that's when I see on those pauses, right away when it's paused, that's when it seems to get hit, especially for trout fishing. With other species, it might be different. You might have to vary it up a little bit more, kind of see what retrieving, what action they want. But the great thing is you can do a lot of things with that bait. And then using that Megabass X70, that's a super cool bait. Very stable, suspends. I do have some Gancraft 70s. I was using those. Those fish well, like they cast well, but as far as their action goes, I tend to have a lot of rollover with them, which I'm not a big fan of, and I'm just not wanting. I might try to put some like suspend strips on, or like some little lead tape, something like that, to maybe get it a little more stable. But honestly, with fishing the Era baits, the Tiny Glide, I have not picked up a Gancraft 70 since I've gotten the Era bait, just because that Era bait is so stable, so versatile. Like I fished it in lakes, I fished it in small bodies of water, streams, super cool bait. And then that Era bait, they're, the Gancraft 70 and the Era bait, they're pretty similar size. But then I also got this BFS umbrella rig, and I did hook into a fish my last trip out with my buddy and his kid. Just was not able to keep it pinned and everything. It just, I don't know what happened. It got off. It happens. But I think 4-pound is a little bit light for this, just because you have the potential to maybe hook. In some of these lakes that I have, there's trout and other big fish. Like, I would really have a heck of a fight trying to get a pike in with this, and I think a big enough pike would definitely just, I feel like, mess this up, like really bend it out, mangle it up. But this was a super cool bait to throw. Has little blades on it, and it's perfect for out here because I can only have 3 hooks on an umbrella, or umbrella A-rig situation. So it's really perfect. Those are made by a guy on Instagram, George. Here, let me pull it up real quick, because if you guys want to check him out, I definitely would recommend those. He makes them down to that size, but then he is also making bigger ones, but still finessey, like more kind of finessey ones for calico and spotted bay bass and halibut, things like that. Super cool bait. But anyway, it's George, just how the normal spelling of George, DLC 12 all together, and super cool bait. I would definitely recommend anyone doing BFS to pick those up. I discovered that bait. So I discovered the Era baits from Jimmy Raw Fishing, and then I discovered the umbrella rig by Aggressively Average Anglers. I don't remember their names, but a super cool bait. And that's the thing with social media, is you can find some of these garage built baits from your more influential people out there in the fishing industry. So that was really cool. But a lot of my BFS fishing, especially for trout, is just downsized, like bass fishing gear. One of my favorite trout lures that I've discovered, also is because of Jimmy from Raw Fishing, is the Chatterbait Flashback Mini. I hate the trailers that they come with. The trailers are literally trash. But the Chatterbait itself has been really good. I'm wanting to tie up like maybe a bucktail marabou situation for it, because right now I've been running little paddle tails off the back. Paddle tails seem to be fine. I need to try to find some, like maybe some straight tail minnows, or I've been running some tiny flukes, some zoom tiny flukes off the back as a trailer in some more natural colors, and those have seemed to be doing really well. But I've caught some good sized trout and some small trout on those mini chatterbaits, and then throwing finesse paddle tails. So the Bass Pro XPS Speed Shad in 3-inch white. Like, the local Cabela's only has, they have a white, and then they have electric chicken, which is the pink green situation. And I was like, we'll do white. White's a good color for a lot of things. Caught a pretty big bass, not a big bass, caught a pretty big rainbow trout on that specific thing, just running it on a ball jig head. I have some like Bass Pro crappie jig heads. I got some like swim jig heads, and then I got some regular ball jigs that I can put onto this little BFS A-rig. But another thing that's really has worked well for me is the Berkley Power Bait Ripple Shad in the smallest size you can get, and I think it's a 2.5 or 3-inch. And I get that. I'm able to get that specifically in a rainbow trout pattern. Rainbow trout patterns just really kill it here. I think that pattern just does well. Like trout, and specifically I catch a lot of rainbows, are cannibalistic and are predator fish. But one thing that I do, that there's a lot of crawfish down here, so Some of the people I take out on my Airbnb have been really doing, I pick out all their lures. They've been doing really well on small crawfish imitators, and they've been doing good on little hair jigs that I've tied up, some bucktail jigs. I've dyed some of them pink and tied up some rainbow trout kind of imitator bucktail jigs, and those have been doing really good. They're a little more subtle. I caught that, it wasn't on my BFS, but it was on an ultralight spinning rod. When we went out to the Tetons, I caught that brook trout on a hair jig that I tied up, and subsequently lost that hair jig later in the trip, but oh well. And then I've been catching them a lot on, I've been doing really well on inline spinners too. That's just a staple for any multi-species fishing. And also, I would categorize like a beetle spin as like a little spinner bait. I don't love the trailers that beetle spins come with too, but I like the little arm that you can add on, and you can put that with the paddle tail just to add a little something different. Or you can throw those little paddle tails put them on a little tiny underspin. But my first season throwing BFS has gone really well so far. I'm really pleasantly surprised. I have this YouTube video where I'm out at this hike, and I literally say, I think it'd be really cool to throw BFS here. And then the next year I'm throwing BFS there, and it was really cool. And this last trip, I caught a nice little native brook trout on that XBS speed shad. That's the thing, when I'm throwing BFS, I have found a couple different things. I'm usually just sticking to one lure a lot more than what I'm used to. If I'm bass fishing, I might switch it up a lot if I just have one rod. So one thing I've seen with my BFS is I'm sticking to one lure a lot better, and don't bring a ton of lures with me, but the lures that I do bring, I have a lot of confidence in. And for like BFS bass fishing, looking into like maybe getting some tiny worms or stuff like that, but still like the AirBait's Tiny Glide and the chatterbait and the little jerkbait, stuff like that. That'll all work. And I'm gonna tie up some. I have this idea to make a little, and there's this guy on YouTube whose YouTube channel is Small Jaws, and he makes these really cool rabbit zonker crawdad style jigs, and those are super cool. I'm gonna try to tie up something like that. But as far as the bass fishing goes, for BFS, I threw this a little bit. I've caught a pike on my BFS setup. I've caught two. The second one cut my 6-pound line, just cut it, and took my little mini chatterbait. But I've also caught perch on that chatterbait mini. I've caught little bass on that chatterbait mini. That's just overall a great multi-species finesse lure. But one tip that I have, and I don't know if this is just for my BFS setup or like just this reel. Well, your casting is completely different too, but with this reel, when I'm normally setting up a bait caster, I am setting it up where I don't have any brakes on, nothing like that. And when I'm adjusting my spool tension knob, like I'll have my drag set, but no brakes on, nothing like that. And when I'm adjusting with regular casting, more conventional, I will I will loosen that spool tension knob until that bait is just slowly dropping towards the ground. And then if it hits the ground and it doesn't overspool, that's great. And then I'll put my brakes on and I'll adjust my brakes as I need it. Typically I'm putting them like a couple clicks or like a 3, stuff like that. And then adjusting as necessary if there's wind, if there's something else going on. But with this BFS setup, I am adjusting. So this Tsuranoya, the spool tension knob clicks. So I'm clicking it until that lure's dropping. And then I do 1 click tighter off of that. And then I'll set my brakes to, I think this goes up to 5. Usually I'm setting it at a 4 and I'll go down from there. But that's been my best success with not backlashing nearly as much. But also your casting is going to be a lot different. You're not going to like, maybe it's like the rod, but I don't pitch a lot with this rod. A lot of it is in the wrist action with your casting. It's a little swish and flick, little Harry Potter just swish and flick thing. And that seems to help a lot. I do like some overhead casting or like some sidearm, but it's not super aggressive. It's not like anything like that. It's just going to be like a little flick, or it's going to be a soft cast, because like you can really bird's nest these quickly. But that's my not super long episode right now, but that's been my first season. It's been going good so far. I really loved it. Every big bait fisherman has it in them to throw tiny baits, because it's a lot of fun, especially if you're throwing something like the Tiny Glide or a BFS umbrella rig. I think that umbrella rig will work once it starts getting a little bit colder and those fish are a little more active, a little more aggressive. I think that umbrella rig will work really well, especially catching a big one, or maybe even multiple at a time. But that's been my first season throwing BFS. It's been really cool. It's been a big learning curve because your casting's not the same. There's some different things with it, but my fishing style hasn't super changed with it, because I'm still liking moving baits. I'm still liking baits that you can be really active with and be casting. So far that's what we got going on, but thank you guys so much for listening. Like I said, go and check out those different links to support me. Give the channel a follow, YouTube, podcast, different things like that. But thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will get you for the next episode of Garage Built Baits.